The Legend of Stephen King.
Stephen Edwin King is an American author of horror, supernatural fiction, suspense, crime, science fiction, and fantasy novels. His books have sold more than 350 million copies, and many have been adapted into film, television series, miniseries, and comic books.
University of Maine. Stephen King was born on September 21st, 1947 in Portland, Maine. He graduated from the University of Maine at Orono in 1970 with a BA in English and later worked as a teacher while establishing himself as a writer. His sophomore year at the University of Maine at Orono, he wrote a weekly column for the school newspaper, the Maine Campus. He was also active in student politics, serving as a member of the Student Senate. He came to support the anti-war movement at the Orono campus, arriving at his stance from a conservative view that the war in Vietnam was unconstitutional.
A draft board examination immediately post-graduation found him to have high blood pressure, limited vision, flat feet, and punctured eardrums.
Stephen King and Tabitha Spruce. Stephen and Tabitha married in January of 1971. He met Tabitha in the stacks of the Folger Library at the University of Maine at Orono, where they both worked as students. As Stephen was unable to find placement as a teacher immediately, the Kings lived on his earnings as a laborer at an industrial laundry in her student loans and savings, with an occasional boost from a short story sale to men's magazines.
Stephen made his first professional short story sale, The Glass Floor, and Starling Mystery Stories, in 1967. Throughout his early years in his marriage, he continued to sell short stories in men's magazines. Many of these were later gathered into the Night Shift collection or appeared in other anthologies. Teaching. In the fall of 1971, Stephen King began teaching high school English classes at Hamden Academy, the public high school in Hamden, Maine, writing in the evening, and on the weekends, he continued to produce short stories and to work on novels. In the spring of 1973, Doubleday and Co. accepted the novel Carrie for publication. On Mother's Day of that year, Stephen King learned from new editor at Doubleday's, Bill Thompson, that a major paperback sale would provide him with the means to leave teaching and write full-time.
Richard Bachman. King has published 61 novels, including 7 under the name Richard Bachman and 5 nonfiction books. He has written over 200 short stories, most of which have been compiled in book collections. Many of his stories are set in his home state of Maine.
King published several books as Richard Bachman, 4 early novels: Rage, 1977, The Long Walk, 1979, Roadwork, 1981, and The Running Man in 1982. Were published under the moniker because of King's concern that the publisher wouldn't accept more than 1 book from an author within a year.
He came up with the alias after seeing a novel by Richard Stark on his desk Coupled with what he heard playing on his record player at the time, You Ain't Seen Nothin' Yet by Bachman Turnover Overdrive. Colorado, House of the Kings. Carrie was published in the spring of 1974. That same fall, the Kings left Maine for Boulder, Colorado. They lived there for a little less than a year, during which Stephen King wrote The Shining, set in Colorado. Returning to Maine in the summer of 1975, the Kings purchased a home in the Lakes region of western Maine. At that house, Stephan finished writing The Stand, much of which is also set in Boulder. The Dead Zone was also written in Bridgington.
Movies and TV shows. Many of King's works were made into films or TV adaptations. Cujo and Firestarter were released for the big screen in 1983 and 1984, respectively. While it debuted as a miniseries in 1990, the film The Shining, released in 1980 and starring Jack Nicholson and Shelley Duvall, became a renowned horror thriller that remains well known to this very day.
His compelling, thrilling tales have continued to be used as the basis of numerous films for the big and small screens. In 2011, he published 11/23/63, a novel including time travel as part of an effort to stop the assassination of President John F. Kennedy.
Achievements. Actress Kathy Bates and actor James Caan starred in the critically and commercially successful adaptation of Misery in 1990, with Bates winning an Oscar for her performance as the psychotic Anne Wykes.
4 years later, The Shawshank Redemption, starring Tim Robbins and Morgan Freeman, and based on one of his stories, became another acclaimed outgoing with multiple Oscar nominations. King also wrote Joyland in 2013, a pulp fiction-style thriller that takes readers on a journey to uncovering who's behind the unsolved murder, and he surprised audiences by releasing Dr. Sleep, 2013, a sequel to The Shining, with Sleep hitting #1 on the New York Times bestseller list.